What's up, bass players? I'm Jesse Wood, and you are watching Jesse TV. And you know what time it is? It's that time for another amazing low end thumping episode of. Welcome to the show, guys. So today I've got another amazing guest bass player, Noah Watkins. Man, we've been talking just a few minutes already, and I can tell this show is going to be charged. It's going to be live. It's going to be fun. Of course, it's live. We're coming at you in real time. The good news is you're catching us in a moment. The bad news is there's no rewind button. So watch now, catch all the goodness as it comes because there's no filters. But really, thank you so much for tuning into the show. Bass players, don't forget, like, the whole point of this show is just to add value to the bass community. So be a part. Reach out to me. Let me know. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, whatever it is. Find me. Let me know you're a bass player. Let's hang out. I want to hear your story. Here's some tips and tricks, stuff you got going on. Man, I love getting to talk to and hang out with other bass players. And on that note, let's get Noah in here and let's get this going. Noah, welcome to the show, bro.
What's up, guys? Dude, thank you so much for having me, man. This is awesome. What a treat. I'm really stoked to be here.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I like more. Is it your outfit or all the instruments next to you? It's like a hard comparison because both are looking great. But yeah, man, thank you so much for being a part of the show. And guys, just so you know a little bit about Noah, a bass player extraordinaire, gifted musician. Clearly you can see not just basses in the background. And there's something that happens inside of me sometimes a little bit when I see somebody that has a guitar and a bass. And I tell you what it is. It's this question. Are they that guitar player that was forced into playing bass and they resent playing bass or just not like good as the other band guitar player? Or were they first a bass player and they just can also play guitar? Guys, I'm gonna spoil it for you. Here's the good news. Noah is originally a bass player. Now, if you're listening to this and you're originally a guitar player and you hate your life for being a bass player, there is hope for you. And I want to reach out to you right now and let you know that bass is underrated and understated, and you have so much more appreciation in the bass community than the guitar community. So just put the guitar down, convert completely over to bass, and we'll accept you and love you as one of our own. Is that right? No, am I telling it?
100%. 100%. I only picked up the guitar because it was like out of like necessity at the point where I really started playing guitar. I've been a bass player my whole life pretty much since I think I started playing when I was about 10 or 11 years old. I just remember I like walked up to my mom and dad and I was like, can you guys buy me a bass guitar? I want to learn how to play bass. And they did for my birthday. I think it was my 10th, 11th birthday, and I've been playing bass ever since then. So guitar is just a necessity.
Let's start that conversation. Like, you're 10 years old. I'm pretty sure I was trying to figure out like a heel flip because I was playing Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Remember that in 64? I don't know. I'm a little older than Noah. Guys, maybe some of you guys in the audience can relate to this, but there's a lot of things I was trying to figure out at 10 years old, and not even at 10 was I trying to figure out bass. So what made you go like, Mom, Dad, I want a bass?
That is a great question. I think I literally think so. My parents, like I was kind of raised on listening to Bob Marley and the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So
that'll do it.
Yeah, I was like, Flea's Sweet. Those bass lines in those Bob Marley songs are vibing, they're grooving the whole time. So that's why I wanted to do that. And my sisters were really into punk rock, so I grew up with a lot of bass heavy music, a lot of punk rock bass lines, a lot of, Flea and the Chili Peppers, all that stuff. So bass was pretty prominent, and I just something about like just digging into a bass was really cool to me. So I started with the bass and then played that, and I've never stopped. So then I picked up guitar, I think like 6 years later. So I'm definitely newer to guitar, but bass is where I got my roots. And when I'm getting more of my gigs, like my high dollar gigs, I'm playing bass for people. So that's how that goes.
Let's just pause right there. So high dollar gigs. This is definitely something that I can relate to. And honestly, whenever I look back, if I'm on stage or just talking with other musicians, I'm always so thankful that somehow accidentally, as it may be, I ended up a bass player, because it is so much easier to get gigs as a solid bass player, because to be real, there's not a lot of competition in general. There's just rarely do I run into another bass player. One, two, rarely are other bass players like dedicated and really good at their craft, adaptable and able to kind of figure something out in a few short moments notice. So I have played almost every major venue just in my area in Hampton Roads, Virginia, with different artists. And I'm pretty sure I've played different genres at pretty much all of them. Just because anytime somebody needs a bass player, somehow I get a call. It's either like me or one other guy in my area, and our styles are completely different. So it doesn't even hurt my feelings. It's like, oh, you need that kind of bass player. Yeah, no, he's the guy. Yeah. Oh, you need this kind of bass player. Okay, yeah, I'm the guy. So 100%. It's like we highly respect each other, and we live in. We overlap a little bit, but we're pretty much in different segments. We never run into each other. I think only one time was there a local artist I did a couple gigs for, but I was already kind of more dedicated to another guy that had been giving me regular gigs, and we had traveled, been on TV. So the other guy, he kind of used me for a temporary time, and then we had a scheduling conflict, and so he got this other guy. I think that was the only time we really ran into each other. But bass players, if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, comment, let us know what it's been like for you as a bass player getting gigs. If you're new to bass, I can tell you, don't move. Don't pick up guitar because you think it's cooler. If I would say if you did anything else, I would say play drums, because I love playing drums.
Yeah.
I love playing drums. But playing bass is so good for a side hustle. It really, really is.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I mean, so I'm the guy who taught me bass, my mentor, Troy Stansberry, has definitely, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the city I live, has been like the go-to guy for a lot of gigs. So when I was like more up and coming, he started, giving me some of those gigs, and he started helping me make connections. And literally, I think just being a solid bass player has been more financially like stable than anything as far as just my life. So like if you want to be a musician, you want to hustle and like do it for a career, you're going to be playing a lot of bass players who are like have good tone and reliable and show up on time. And like you don't even have to be the best bass player, but if you do those things, you're going to be getting called for every weekend. I mean, before COVID, it was like I was playing every weekend in some facet, and it's awesome. I mean, having dependable gigs and knowing that when people give me a call, like I'm going to be able to show up and, pull through for them, and having that like level of standard of excellence is awesome. That's going to keep the gigs coming, and there's eventually going to be no shortage of them if you just stick with it. So I always tell musicians, I'm like, look, pick up the bass, get a good bass, just pick up a Fender or something reliable, something that's going to be, super versatile, and the calls will come. Like over the past 5 years, I've played everything from metalcore to pop, country, cover bands, you name it. I've done it all, and just from being a reliable bass player. So I agree with that for sure. There's bass playing gigs. There's never a shortage of them. Somebody always needs a bass player. So that
so you're in a band as well called Sebastian in the Mood.
Yeah,
guys, I actually have a little treat for you here. This is my Spotify here, and let's just play one of these songs. This is your most recent release, Lift Your Spirits, and the band is Sebastian in the Mood. Let's hear some bass. Let's see what's happening.
She said, I'm afraid to fall in love.
So this is already like grooving, man. I love how simple this is, but so consistent. It kind of has it already kind of has a let me say that the bass part, it reminds me, or the way I feel about it is getting me excited, like listening to Kings of Leon.
Yeah. Wow.
It's almost, it's so repetitive, but it's so good. You love it for the whole 3-4 minutes, and you don't want it to stop. Then it's stuck in your head. Kings of Leon, I think I've probably stolen almost every one of their bass lines and played during different. I play a lot in church settings, and we'll have moments where maybe like there's an MC on stage and people are just hanging out or whatever. It's more lively, and I'll just tell the drummer like pause, let me drop something, and I'll just start playing a Kings of Leon line, and then next thing you know, got a little rim shot and a good kick, and people are just
oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, not to be cliche, but that's really, our roles as bass players. We're just supposed to be laying down that groove. So like if you got a good bass line, people like they can't help but get into it, or it starts with them tapping their feet. The next thing you know, they're dancing a little bit, and the rest is history from there. I think really, for a long time, like I can do all different styles, whether it's slap, whether it's digging with a pick, tapping, chords, fingerstyle, whatever. But really, at the end of the day, like it's all about just laying down a bass line that people are going to be able to get into and just like naturally feel that groove. And man, I'm really flattered at that Kings of Leon comparison. That's awesome. I love, I think the song Closer, I know it's not at all comparable to our song, but he uses that whammy pedal on that line, and I just think that is like one of the coolest things ever, just hearing that. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know if you know what song I'm talking about, but yeah. That song with Sebastian the Mood, though, we kind of wanted something that was like almost throwback to like 50s kind of rock, where it's just heavy, like dun 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 dun, 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 like something that like you could instantly like just kind of start grooving with. And that was kind of like the whole idea. We just wanted that to be like the backbone of the song. So just really doing that as a bass player is really important. And that's another thing, bass players, if you're like, oh, what makes a good bass player? If you can do that, you're going to be getting all the gigs for sure. So that definitely, that song was really fun to track in the studio. I've used like every different kind of bass under the sun, whether they're super active 18-volt preamps.
You got a lot back there.
Yeah.
What's your favorite one right now? Let's see one.
Probably this guy. I'm a big Fender guy. I was a big Music Man guy, but I sweat a lot when I play, so I like sweated out a battery compartment, and like it just kept having problems. So I was like, I'm just gonna switch back to passive basses. But this is my American Performer. I've had it just for a little bit now, so it's just a PJ configuration. I'm not gonna lie, 90% of the time I'm on just the P bass pickup just up front, and then my backup is actually same idea. It's the they keep changing the names. Whatever the deluxe Mexican Fender is. So same idea, PJ, active, passive, and high mass bridge. And I put some stickers on it because I'm a punk kid at heart. So I
think you're not a punk rock bass player if there's not a sticker. There was a period in time where I had an ATA, like aircraft approved case for my pedal train. And the whole top of it just covered in stickers. That's just everything from Neff beanies to all the brands of pedals I had going on. Yeah, that's I think we all go through that. It's good. It's timeless.
It really is. And I mean, the white one's more of my backup anyways. I usually have that one strung like a 5-string. I don't have any 5 strings right now, so this one's usually in like just B standard. So
let's talk about that. Your choice of not having any 5 strings.
Yeah, so that really came down to a few different things. So for actually the predominant part of my career at this point, I've used 5 strings. up until I want to say like a couple years ago, 2 years ago. I was playing so much music with a lot of like heavy left-handed keyboard stuff or backing tracks where it was like, you know, a 5-string, like a low B with that would be just cutting out of the mix. And then I was actually playing in like a metalcore band. We were tuning down to like drop B and drop A. And so you would think naturally like you would use a 5-string for that. The problem was our guitarists, they were using like standard drop tuning. So instead of it being like B standard, which is B, E, A, D, it was B, F sharp. Now I can't remember the rest of the tuning. Whatever that tuning is. So it's, you know, there's actually a whole step between what your notes, your string should actually be. So instead of being able to just double up riffs really easily on a 5-string, you know, I would have to be in that alternate tuning as well. So the demand for actually using a 4-string to be able to follow the exact fingering and the pattern to make the riff really coherent between the bass and the guitar was what really brought me back to using 4-strings. And then now I don't really play metal at all. I mean, I will, but I just don't have any of those gigs right now. So it's just back to 4-string. I think it sits a little better in the mix if there's a lot of backing track and a lot of, you know, a lot of heavy-handed, left-handed keyboardists. But yeah, so far. And then teaching too. Like I'm very fortunate enough this year. So I do music as a living, but teaching right now. And a 5-string will really throw off your beginner students. They're just like, that extra string really freaks them out. So
true. You're trying to show them where to go on the E string, but they're lost because they're looking at you over here.
Yeah.
You can kind of see it. This glowing bass is a Cort 5-string.
Nice.
The one next to it is an Ibanez acoustic 4-string. I've had it like 13 years. The electronics have long since gone bad. I actually pulled them just out, so it's just fully acoustic. So it's in my room, brushing up quick on a song or going over something before I head out the door to a gig, and I don't have to set anything up. Or if I'm just trying to get some familiarity, or I'm writing in a writing session, which now we do digitally, so it's great. I can just grab it and be on Zoom doing writing sessions for production clients. But that 4-string, I will definitely pull that out or bring that with me if I'm sitting across from somebody that I'm trying to help learn bass, because them looking at the 5-string, I notice it is like a whole thing to try to figure out. And I forget it's there. I played nothing but 5-string, and most of the time I'm not even hitting that 5th string. It's more of, I want that sometimes, especially I do a lot playing with different singers, especially in the church world. Mm-hmm. And so I might play the same song a lot, but the key will be shifting.
Oh yeah. 100%.
But I love, by the time I figure it out, how I like to do a song, I like to keep the notes relative to each other. Mm-hmm. So if I'm doing like a 1, 5, 6, 4, and I want that 1 to be lower, and then we shift somewhere on the neck. Now all of a sudden, let's say we're in D. Now the 1, if I only have 4 strings, it's up, and I don't have any options. And I personally don't like having to shift when I like that. And then I've got that mid, say that mid more octave regular D when I start shifting my dynamic or doing something different. And I love my new bass. It's a Halo custom bass.
Nice, man.
Fan fret. It's 36-inch on the low B, mm-hmm. and 34-inch on the G. So intonation is like flawless, but that 36-inch scale on the low B, it's like
so loud.
For days. Last night I just did a gig, and it's more geared towards younger crowd. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty loud. They had the bass like hot, and we had a small kind of in the pocket team, which is one of my favorites. So there was no guitar player. Yeah. It was keys, acoustic, me, and my buddy David Solomon on drums. He's going to be a guest on the show probably next week, because he's a bass player as well, but he plays drum. He's an incredible drummer.
Those are awesome. Those guys kill it. I love that.
Dude, he's so good. But we were playing everything in C. and man, hitting that low C, like we're in this massive building, and something up in the far right, like rattled, and dust just started coming, and I just had a smile like the Grinch. Like, this is how I know my job is being done well. And the best part is one of the girls that was leading one of the songs, her name's Cleanne. I actually need to get her on here too. She's an amazing bass player, and she just went like, it's one thing when you're playing and you hit a note and you get that stink face that's like, oh, that's good.
Oh yeah.
Clee, she's facing forward. I hit that low C just in sound check, and she said, like, oh, that's so good. So I'm like surrounded by bass players, and they're like, yes, this is everything.
That is what's up. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's one thing I do miss about that 5-string, just being able to do that. And like you're saying, like, whatever note your one is, being able to hold that out really low is so awesome. Shoot, man, you're gonna make me want to go out and buy a 5-string here in a little bit.
That's my goal, actually. I had you on the show just to convert you
to 5-string.
To 5-string.
Well, and that is another thing too that you brought up earlier. Like, so the one thing that I do also miss about 5-string. So if when I'm in like an alternate hand positioning, let me pull out a bass here. So if I'm playing up here, instead of actually having to go low, so if, say I'm just like rocking on this F, instead of having to go back down here, like on a 4-string, on a 5-string, your F would be right here, right on that fret. So you can do a lot of different alternate hand positionings, and that's one thing I do miss probably the most about the 5-string. Not even so much necessarily like I love those low notes, but being able to just play whatever you want in different hand positionings. Like I said, instead of going back down here for your G, having that G like right there is that's awesome. And being able to just when I always tell musicians, bass players, my more advanced students, I'm like, if you're looking at being more serious about this, you should buy a 5-string, and then opens up to a whole new possibility of like even exercises. I always teach my students, on a 5-string, 2-octave scales. That's if you get a 5-string, you're just playing 2-octave scales right off the bat. And just learning to use that whole neck.
Let's talk about some technique. So you teach, and I want you to just tell the audience fully how you came into that and what that looks like. But I want to talk about some solid technique. I work with a lot of bass players. I've had the gift and ability for the last 10 years pretty heavily to work with other church musicians and whole teams and train them as a whole team. You mentioned earlier, if I have a piano player that's heavy on the left hand, I've got to shift what I'm playing to fit in the pocket. Essentially, you're looking at where everybody is on the frequency spectrum, and you're trying to find your home and your place, and so that everybody plays well. And I start slapping the piano player's left hand. Stop it. Like, stay up there. You don't have to do everything anymore. Okay, we've got a whole team here. Getting it going. But when I'm working with a lot of bass players, I'll say this: one of the major things that I have to bring up in conversation and that I talk about is not what's the right note to play and where is it. It's really how they're holding the string and how smoothly the transition is moving from one note to another note, even just simple whole notes. I have found, and you can tell me what you've observed, I have found that I have the hardest time having bass players play clean, well-sustained, and well-transitioned just whole notes. Then getting them to play like 8th notes or 16th notes and just running it. Because when you're doing these whole notes, it's like it's the little things now in your technique that start to add up when it comes to overall sound quality.
Absolutely. And I'd agree with that. I'd even go as far to say like bass is actually more of a subtlety instrument than it is like less is more. And I always, growing up, I hated that when people were like, oh, you're a bass player, less is more. And I was like, oh, that is so gross. But I learned the hard way less is actually more. I've always gotten in trouble for overplaying, and I think the key thing, actually, just being a good musician in general, whether you're guitar player, bass player, piano player, drummer, singer, is you're at the end of the day, you want to serve the song, and so it's really, really about serving the song. And being, a good bass player doesn't always mean you're gonna be flashing, doing a lot of crazy stuff. Like you said, a lot of times it's you're playing in that pocket. If nobody's actually noticing the bass, sometimes that actually means you're doing your job right. Just staying those notes, making sure you're laying that foundation and getting out of the way for, whatever is going on, whether it's the melodies, the vocals, piano line, whatever. And obviously there are times where you're really like the bass is taking the center stage, or it's a little busier of a line, but less is more, and just really being intentional as a bass player and serving the song. And that is such an important thing that I feel like for a long time I missed out on. And I remember a big wake up call, almost a slap in the face. I got asked to do a studio session when I was living out in California, just to help, write some songs. It wasn't like a crazy serious high end gig or anything like that, but I remember we had like some of the idea of the song, and I was playing what I thought was a good bass line, and the producer was like, this is bad. This is all bad. We got to redo this. And I was so at first I was a little offended, and then I was crushed. And then I realized after I retracked it into just a lot simpler, I think I did one little fill the whole song from a pre-chorus into a chorus. And looking at it just objectively, I was like, yeah, that producer was 100% right.
Man,
playing too much.
I love this topic right here. I do a lot of production, and I'm a co-owner of a music company. Mm-hmm. And I also bring the bass into the studio, and I record bass, but I'm very hands-on from the initial concept and writing of a song to all of the pieces. And that alone, doing that for several years now, has helped me figure out where that producer was coming from. When you say serve the song, I think a great picture of this, guys, is if you've ever seen Fast and the Furious, even that first one, he had this is probably not the best example because of what happens in the end, but that Mitsubishi Eclipse, that neon green, Mitsubishi Eclipse, and he's like, I got to go fast, I got to win. And he puts a ridiculous amount of NOS in the car, and he ends up having he kills it, and Vin Diesel wins, in that first kind of thing. But great bass is nitrous oxide to a song. It's not the chassis. It's not the frame. It's what do you have? Where do you intend to go? And I'm just going to help you get there more amazingly. You really figure out. So here's one thing I love about being a bass player is that if you grasp it, if you understand all of the potential that's in your hands as a bass player, you can not just play bass on a song, but you can take what somebody wants a song to feel like, the message they're trying to convey, the feelings they're trying to invoke through this creative journey, and you can take it like that Mitsubishi Eclipse and hit the NOS button and just take it to a whole nother level, whether you're muted or your whole notes, even down to what octave you choose, where you choose to slide. Man, to take something that I hear and where something is going, and be able to push it along and add to the back and forth with maybe the lyrics or whatever, all the other creative pieces, and to jump in there with bass and just bring the whole thing to another level. It is a fantastic ability, honor, and privilege. But like you said, you got to go from how do I have the most satisfaction as a bass player on this track to upgrading your thinking to how can I add the most to what this song is trying to do and what the goal of this song is.
Yeah.
That's absolutely. Where you as a bass player will go from people aren't mad when you're playing bass to they can't imagine doing a song without you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And just, to continue on what you're saying, obviously, bass is a melodic instrument, but I always view bass like you're really that bridge. You're the bridge between what the drums are doing and what that guitar and the melody and the keys are doing. So, like, I think good bass players will also really encapsulate that and really just help connect that melody, give that life, give the dynamics in the rhythm section, and really just, like you said, just reinforce everything that's being done in the song. You know, like even those octave slides, like never doubt the power of an octave slide. Like you said, that is like a tool in bass. Like you don't want to overuse it, but there are certain points where you're just like digging in, and then you slide that up on the octave, especially if you're still on that low E string, and it is just fat. It brings that
Yeah.
song to another level. I totally relate to that, and you know, it just goes back into that like bass players. I always, you know, guitar players when they pick up bass, they don't think like a bass player. And then someone asked me, well, what is a bass player who plays bass well? What do they think like? And I always tell people, I'm like, good bass players who like have that when they're on the bass, who are like, oh, that's a good bass player. They actually think like a drummer or a producer, like either of those. So really, like I said, just accenting whatever the drums are doing in the song rhythmically, and then whatever the guitar or the melody is doing, just bringing those together is what's going to make you a good bass player. And then that, like you said, actually spills over into being a good songwriter, a good producer, tying songs in together well. So that's actually what I'm going for more, is just like writing good songs, helping write good songs, and playing bass is a huge foundation to that. Whether I'm just playing simple, you know, quarter note or whole notes, or I'm playing super fun 16th note punk rock bass lines, you know,
Yeah.
it just really comes down to like going back to that idea. We got to serve the song. We are going to, you know, there's going to be times to shine for sure, but shining as a bass player isn't being out in the front. You're not, you know, the Les Claypools and the Fleas, those guys are awesome, but if you look at their bass lines, it's actually just supporting what's already going on in the song
Yeah.
instead of like the bass part as itself. You can't really, I always tell bass players, like, don't look at your part individually. You got to look at it in the context, you know, context of the song.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when I'm in the studio and I get ready to lay down a bass track, I can't even begin until enough of the concept of the song has already been laid out.
Yeah,
I
100%.
gotta know. I need if either I need a rough vocal track, or I need the vocalist there singing along, because I need to know, like, did you just shift octave? Did you go from like settled to now you're pushing in power? Where
Yeah.
are we in this? Where are you trying to go? Because I'll follow you. I'll push. Say we're just doing whole notes, and then you're about to just make an octave jump. I'll do the same. Maybe I'm on a low D. I'll hit it and then slide up. And then it's like, oh, we're about to go somewhere. And then boom, drums come in. Boom, boom, they're driving.
Yeah.
And it just that octave. And here's where being a bass player so long really gave me a advantage, because like you said, I didn't realize I was being trained to think like a producer, because you're constantly taking in all the other instruments.
Yeah.
To even know what to do and where to go, you have to hear everything else just to have the information that you need to do this well. So whenever I'm crafting my own inner mix or whatever it is, I've got a balance and blend of everything like a sound guy. And I won't even have bass boosted. I'll have it loud enough so I'm not compensating by playing too hard, because if it's not loud enough, my hands will be hurting later, because I'm just really cranking the strings because I can't hear myself.
Right.
But I'll get a good blend where I can hear myself, and I'll turn even the master volume down a little bit so your brain can even process everything. But being a bass player for so long, really, I didn't realize how much it was setting me up to really think like a producer, to hear everything. Oh, guitar's doing swells, so I do ambient bass. Let me do drone, or if he's like droning, maybe I'll do swell. So even as you add in everything else, or you're as a music director, you've got two guitar players, you're listening to this guy, hey, you go low, you stay there, and then you like with the keyboardist, pick where you're going to be so everybody else knows where to be. Okay, so if you're doing rhythm, you don't go lower than here, but you also have the freedom to just stay up here. Whatever you want to do, just stay up here in the frequency spectrum. But tell me, how is it that you are teaching people right now? Maybe some of you guys, you want some tips, you want some tricks, you want some lessons. Is there any way that anybody watching this could get lessons from the Noah Watkins? How would they go about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously technology, I mean, we're in two different states, like halfway across the country from each other almost. Well, maybe not that much, but you know, I started to teach over Zoom and stuff, just because it was like everyone's locked up inside for the most part. You know, some states are a little bit more opened up. My state, Michigan, is not so much. So, you know, it's been a really convenient way to like, okay, you know, this isn't the most ideal situation, but we can teach over Zoom, no problem. So, I think the thing about musicians, especially in this day and age, currently in this climate we're in, we have to learn to be adaptable and to realize like the world that like the rock and roll world is not really existent at this point, you know?
Right.
So I think the key thing about musicians, if you're wanting to pursue this like as a career or just even as like something that's more of a serious hobby where you are making some side money, is you have to be adaptable. And so technology has been such a big part of what I'm doing now, you know, getting like upgrading my whole computer rig, my whole production rig, my whole like, all right, I don't actually, so for me, even with that, I don't even use amps anymore when I play live. I just use all like a whole digital rig. Like I have a Line 6 Helix. And even before that, on my bass rig, I was just running direct with a, you know, nice DIs, good compressors, and like a killer preamp. So it's, you know, being a musician isn't about, you know, you have to be adaptable. So for me this year, 2020, a huge part of that was learning to teach, you know, over the internet, over Zoom. And, you know, that is a huge part of what, you know, what I do as a musician now is I teach a lot of bass and a lot of guitar, and, you know, that's just part of it. So if you're looking at doing lessons, hit me up on my Instagram or my Facebook. At that many watts is my Instagram handle, and I can definitely figure out a schedule for you guys. And because it's Zoom, I have weird time slots available. So, you know, if you want to do a bass lesson at 8 o'clock at night, we can totally do that. Or, you know, I have, you know, friends all over. I actually have a student who's in California. So that's, you know, that's a 3-hour different time zone. So being a musician, my schedule means I'm up a little later. So it worked out that I could teach them conveniently just over Zoom. So
that's cool. Actually, we have the link to Noah's Instagram in the description below, so you can connect with him there. There's also the Spotify link to his band if you just want to jam out, listen to what he has going on. For my advanced bass players, maybe even for myself, give me something. Give me a technique, maybe something that you've just kind of started incorporating yourself. I don't know. What do you got for us?
So for me, I've been trying. So just like a technique that's not really, I don't use it as much besides my own music or if I'm accenting stuff. Bass players, I always recommend, or any musician, like learn your music theory, learn your, like at the very least, learn your circle of fifths, like figure out how scales and keys relate to each other. So a big one, you guys won't be able to hear this unfortunately, but a big one that I'm doing a lot lately is actually bass chords. So, you know, if it's a major chord, if I'm on the E string and I'm going to make a major chord. So if we're in C major, no sharps or flats, super easy. But if I'm going to be doing a chord, my major structure is going to look like this. My pointer finger, I'm just going to put right on C on the E string, which is right there, as you can see. And then I'm going to use my ring finger or my pinky, and I'm just going to put up on E on the G string. So you guys probably can't hear that, but it actually makes a chord. And then I'm going to add, so it's my 1. So like a triad is your 1, 3, 5. So normally on, you know, when you're playing guitar, you can get away with playing your C and your E so close together, but on bass your frequency range is so different, your wavelengths are way bigger. So to make the chord actually sound pretty and to add definition, I'm going to play my E up here, so just like that, and then I'm going to add my pinky right here on the G on the A. So I have the whole triad, and you're making, you know, the full chord is right there. You have all the notes in your major triad. Now my right hand is, you know, you strum that chord. I'm going to add some more color. So I'm actually going to do tapping to accent the chord. Now I'm not going to be doing the Billy Sheehan, like, but just to accent the chord, we're going to hit that G again. and then we're going to slide it up to the A.
So you're being even selective on where you're tapping with your right hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now, like, you're taking the bass from just being a bass instrument to adding a lot of melody to it. So, you know, we're C, slide up to the E for the minor shape. Same idea, except instead of them being like a fret apart, we're going to just, for example, be on that E minor on the 12th fret. We're going to put our pointer finger right on the 12th E, and then ring finger or middle finger right on the G, 12th fret, and then you have your minor shape. And then same thing, you can still do your color and add some melody to it. So there's a lot of bass players right now on YouTube are killing it. This, what is his name? He's some guy, I think he's from the Ukraine. His name's Aram Bodrezian or something like that. He has some really great melodic stuff. I mean, he'll even throw like some like chord structures with his slap bass. But he uses a lot of effects too. So like I love doing that. And then with a lot of reverb and delay and just really just laying it out thick. And
that's like, I'll be honest, I'm not that good. I know theory. I'm good enough to do what I need to do, but I just learned from there. So I'll just recap for at least for myself. A triad is the 1, 3, and 5.
Yeah. So like any triad shape, you're gonna just have 3 notes together. For example, like, you know, in your chords. So if you're looking at the Nashville number system, so for example, in the key of C, C is 1, D is 2, E is 3, and then F is 4, G is 5. So when you're building any like major shape, you can do like a power chord, which is just your 1 and your 5. But if you want to add tonality to your chords, you're going to add different notes. So your standard chord shape is going to be like your triad. So just that 1, 3, 5 shape.
Yeah, when I do ambient bass, one of the techniques I've learned, and it's really specific to ambient bass, like you said, wavelength, and kind of basically by ear. I've been playing bass for 22 years now, but I didn't even Google search music theory or anything like that till probably 10 years into being a bass player. It was all like learning tabs, like I said, Red Hot Chili Peppers, and making observations along the way. I knew how to play a chord chart that was in front of me. And that's really as far as I got, but I started making some observations, putting some things together. I think somebody gave me a book or something on the pentatonic scale, and some things started to make sense. And I rode with that for a little while, because you find a little spot that you can like just kind of freehand in if you're hearing something like, oh, I'm going to do a little, a little run or something. And so I basically have a YouTube/Google degree on music theory, but most of it with ambient bass is just moving with your chords while also maintaining a finger on the 1 on a higher octave to kind of give you that pad, and you almost always have the 1 resonating.
Like a pedal tone through there.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And I'm going through essentially 3 delays and 2 reverbs with the ability to adjust between different presets, a little more dry or a little more wet on my last reverb in the chain. And that's pretty much it. You're working with EQ to kind of roll off some of the low end, because it's when all that low end's coming through.
Doing ambient bass. Oh man, it's a lot of low end.
I got to cut the low end. I put a little bit of gain to help it still cut through. And when I do swells, it kind of feels like that bow on a cello.
For sure.
Kind of grit to it. And but most of that has just been by ear. So, bro, thank you so much for the amazing tips on the technique. I'm like, man, I might have to learn how to little tap.
Oh yeah, man.
Something going on. I can't watch people playing bass on YouTube because I instantly feel like I'm a novice. And
same.
I'll just stay in my corner over here and do the one thing.
It's crazy the amount of like good, especially like young kids on the internet these days, like killing it on the bass or the guitar. Dude, it's almost frustrating. I'm like looking at these 13-year-olds like killing it on the bass and the guitar. I'm like, man, wow, that is impressive and amazing, but dang, I'm gonna have to work so much harder if I want to be like that fluid. It's crazy. The internet has made music so much more accessible at all skill levels, and so much more like crazy. Like people are coming up with stuff that, you know, I would never think of. And I think that's the beauty of it. You're just seeing so much crazy talent out there these days. It's awesome. I love that. It's really inspiring. And I think, you know, just on that idea, like people always say like, oh, like music, this is the worst time to be a musician in the sense of like the industry, you know, I'm talking pre-COVID, like,
Yeah.
but I think the opposite, like there's never been a better time to learn different techniques. And the cool thing is a lot of these really talented people on YouTube and Instagram, they're putting up videos of how to teach this too. So it's like what they're doing is super accessible because you can find out really easily or even directly message them, whether it's commenting or just Instagram or whatever. And most of these people are super nice, genuine musicians who are like, at the end of the day, you know, like it's music isn't a competition. We're all in this together. We are all just creating beautiful sounds. And, you know, I love that. And like what Victor Wooten says, you know, music is a language. So like learning all this stuff, it's really just about learning to express yourself more, really to learn how to express, you know, what you're feeling, the emotion, the song, which at the end of the day, it's all we're doing. We're just putting into like sound, emotions into sound, really. And I think that's beautiful. But, you know, I don't be afraid to look, like I always tell musicians, I'm doing this myself. Like, don't be afraid to grow yourself and challenge yourself, and just learn to evolve and change as a musician. And I think that is what's going to make music even more fun for you. And a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves into genres or like, oh, this is my favorite band or this is, you know, and I think that can be detrimental to growing as a musician and growing as, you know, being creative, I guess, in your instrument.
Yeah, agreed. It's something I heard a long time ago. I don't know if it was an actual human or maybe Yoda. I don't know. But it was this, that always approach the table as a learner. And I have adopted this mindset, at least I try to have this mindset, no matter what kind of meeting I'm having, whether it's about music, bass, or just anything completely different, is maybe somebody's consulting me in my knowledge or my wisdom. One thing I decide from the beginning, and I try to know resolutely that this meeting or this interaction is not just for me to impart something to this other person, but there's actually something that they have with wisdom or knowledge or experience that I need. So while they're asking questions, I'm asking that question. What is it about them that I need? That's something that I can learn and I can glean from them. And when you get around other creatives, this is definitely true. Just being on stage with a different drummer can change everything.
100%.
I've learned new things being on stage with different piano players. They did a different inflection or a different inversion. Whoa, what would you do there? I never would have thought to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and so being open and not being so like, this is how it goes, or I'm just going to show up and I'm going to blindly play my part. Instead, it's let me listen to what's happening and what's going on, and just be open to learn and absorb and pick up on tips and tricks that you get from, you know, being around other creatives and other people. But bro, I do want to ask you one last thing before we get out of here. We've been going a while, guys. Thanks so much again for tuning in. Bass players, reach out to me. Let me know that you're a part of this community, and let's hang out and let's chat. But something that was actually encouraging to me, Noah was telling me before the show that you've been a fan of my channel for a while, and just tell me, like, how did you interact with my channel, and now you're here on the show?
Yeah. Well, obviously, like, so Instagram does a pretty easy way of like, if you like guitars, you're going to get a ton of pictures of guitars. So obviously, you know, I'm always looking at basses and guitars on my phone, like, oh, that's pretty. Or I want, you know what gas is, you know, gear acquisition syndrome. So I get that.
I don't have that.
No way.
I got the vaccine.
Well, and I think it was, so originally, I think it was your pedal board, your bass pedal board or something some picture of that or a pedal, and I like that, and I was like, I think I just followed your channel. You know, I've been following it for a while, and just because like that's a passion of mine. So it wasn't even like a going searching out. It was just like, oh wow, look at this. This page is great. It's a bunch of beautiful bass guitars and bass gear that I like, which I totally relate to because obviously, you know, I have way too much of this stuff anyways. So it, you know, I think that those were just our few interactions of just, you know, commenting on stuff and just looking at, you know, gear. And a lot of my close friends, like my buddy Nate actually tagged me in that picture of that GNL bass you had posted recently. He was like, oh dude, check this out. And I was like, man, this is a beaut. I want it. But
that's dope. It is pretty fun. Like I love bass gear, and
I'm a huge nerd, dude. I'm a huge.
you guys are getting to know me a little bit more on this channel. That now my face is up here, but I can be pretty sarcastic and witty. So I just like throwing stuff up and just kind of play on words and a commentary, but really just creating conversation in the community of bass players and connecting. Like there's other people that nerd out over the same stuff I nerd out with, which is good because most of us bass players, we're all by ourselves in our world. Like,
oh yeah,
most of the humans I interact with are not bass players, and it's actually like I played this gig yesterday with my buddy David Solomon on drums, and he's like, "Hey, what's about the show?" And I'm like, "Oh, you're a bass player." Yeah. Like I forget, because it's so not common to like run into other bass players.
Oh
there.
Man, it's like, I think I'm on Facebook. I'm in this like bass guitar bassist of like Grand Rapids, like the city I live in, and we all, you know, we just we're all nerds. And then same with like my close buddies. Actually, I have a few really close friends. We're all bass players, so we never get to see each other play, and each other's like, we never get to jam because we're all mostly bass players. So
yeah.
But we'll see each other. You know, my buddy David, who actually plays bass in Sebastian the Mood now, he's a really good friend of mine. We're both really Fender P bass nerds, like just classic old school P bass sounds with like a tube bass head, and we'll nerd out about gear. And then my buddy Troy, who's my mentor, you know, we'll nerd out about like super high end, really slap-tastic bass players or bass gear like that. And so being a gear nerd is awesome because there's so many other guys out there who are gear nerds, and then you can get down in just different playing styles. And like, you know, I have some friends who play bass and are like, oh, they'll never use a pick or whatever, and I have other friends who they will never use their fingers, and then I'm the guy in the middle who's like, I will kick both your guys' butts with a pick or my fingers, you know, whatever. So
yeah, I think one of my favorite things is just having people comment on a YouTube or Instagram, other bass players, just asking questions like, hey, why this, or what's up with this, or I'm trying to make a decision between this pedal or this pedal. And I love getting the weeds of, well, what are you looking for? What, you know, what's your style? What do you need? And technology and stuff changes all the time. I'm constantly learning more things. Just yesterday, I was in rehearsal for that gig, and I'm going back and forth between my bass and my ambient bass sound, and all of a sudden I lose my ambient bass whole channel. Wow. And I'm like, uh-oh, I got a cable just went bad. Well, first I thought maybe it was my AB pedal. So I'm like quick testing, running around. Turns out this little guy.
The patch cables, here, man, they'll get you.
Little patch cable between my delay reverb pedal and my last verb. And so my best friend who was playing keys last night, he ran out to the car, grabbed another whole 1/4 inch, and so it was like banana yellow. So I plug it in, and it's at the front of my board, so I'm like trying to plug this entire banana
it's looking crazy
underneath the board, so I don't look like a noob that just is falling apart and trying to make something happen while they're filming this thing. I was like, Lord,
man. And I think so. I mean, as you know, we have plenty of horror stories of like gear going down on us. I've had plenty of patch. Actually, the reason I switched to a whole digital rig with my Line 6 Helix was because my last gig I had before I had made the switch, my two things went down. My wireless went down, which sucked. Which that's, you know, whatever rig you're going to use. That's bound to happen.
I don't even play games with wireless because I can't afford that disaster.
Yeah, and then the patch cable from my tuner into my compressor went down, so it was like, you know, redundancy. So I, you know, on stage now, like I always have extra cable ready to go in case the wireless dies. Which I haven't even used wireless all of 2020 for obvious reasons because I haven't been gigging much outside. But you know, same with basses. Like the reason I have two pretty much the exact same bass, just redundancy. You know, one breaks, one goes down. I'm not a clumsy guy, but I sweat a lot. Electronics and sweat don't get along, and you know, depending on the gig, I'm a pretty heavy hitter. I've broken a few bass strings in my day, so it's like
I have broken a low B string.
Yeah, same. People are like blown away. I mean, I was playing in a metal band, so it's like drop B, you know, that's all we were doing, just chugging. But it happens, man. It happens. I actually used to front a metal band and scream at the same time. So like that's on Spotify as well. If you like progressive metalcore, it's called Vela. So that was a really challenging thing, learning to play bass and sing completely different parts rhythmically at the same time, and that was super fun. But yeah, you got to have backups. You got to learn how to, if you're gigging, if you're a professional musician, if you're a hobbyist.
I think the worst part about breaking that low B string is it didn't break. It like just came unwound.
Oh, on the the saddle.
So
I have that all the time.
It was still connected on the bridge and the nut.
Yep.
And so now it's like hanging where the other strings are. So it's messing up sustain.
Yep. It's getting in the way. Oh,
so
bass players.
I eventually had to like try to get it out of the bridge.
Yeah.
And then like through it. Well, now this heavy B string is hanging from the headstock, like hitting me in the leg. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is absolute disaster. I didn't even know this could happen. Fortunately, it's one of the least actual like necessary strings.
Yeah.
It's not necessary. But man, it's just messing up this whole experience right now.
Oh yeah. Bass players, quick. If your basses are doing that a lot, if your strings are breaking down by your bridge, like they're breaking like right in here, and they're not fully breaking, they're just kind of unwinding. You have a little spur or burr right in your saddle. Just take a little file, just sand it out a little bit, not a lot, and then just take a number 2 graphite pencil and just rub that in there, and that's going to take care of that problem. So the graphite will act as a lubricant. So that's my quick the easy fix.
That's genius, bro. Thank you, Noah, so much for being on the show, talking geek, nerdy, bass stuff with me. Everybody that's watching, thank you again so much for hanging out with us. And I want to talk bass with you. Don't forget, hit me up in comments, something. It'd be great to just slowly represent more and more of the bass community on the YouTube, on the Facebook, all this stuff, because I think we're pretty awesome.
Bass players are awesome.
I think we have some things to say at the very least. But anyways, guys, it's been a good night. We've been going almost an hour. Like, where did the time go? I don't know. But man. Noah, I'm sure we'll have you back on the show. Guys, connect with him in the comments below. Subscribe if you like this video. If you got anything out of it, I'm just going to ask you to do one simple thing. Slap that like button like Victor Wooten slaps some bass.